Darian Holt didn't exactly plan on crushing someone's foot within the first 2 minutes of his salsa class, but then again, he didn't plan on being there at all. He stared at his reflection in the mirrored wall, tugging slightly at the collar of his navy button-down, completely out of place among the sea of loose shirts, sneakers, and easy smiles. The upbeat Latin music blasted through the studio as couples spun and shuffled across the polished wood floor. And Darian? He was stiff, awkward, and deeply regretting the bet he lost to his business partner that landed him here. "Relax your shoulders," the instructor called out, clapping to the beat. "This is salsa, not a tax audit." Darian exhaled sharply through his nose. "Great," he muttered. "Now I'm the guy who brings IRS energy to a dance floor." Then he stepped sideways and right onto someone's foot. "Whoa," a woman yelped, stumbling back. "Seriously?" Darian turned quickly, catching her elbow as she balanced herself. "I'm so sorry. That was God, that was awful. Are you okay?" The woman looked up, eyes wide with pain and surprise, and then narrowed with something closer to mild annoyance. "You really commit to a two-step, huh?" She was stunning. Long, dark brown hair tied up in a loose bun, a red tank top that clung to her skin from the heat of the room, and eyes that could slice steel. Darian stammered, still holding her elbow. "I swear I'm not usually this dangerous." She stared at him. "You just stepped on my foot, and then said you're not dangerous. I'm new." She blinked, then let out a soft laugh that made something shift in his chest. "Clearly, I'm Darian," he said quickly, releasing her arm. "Darian Holt." She tilted her head like the name sounded vaguely familiar, but didn't comment. "Harper Nolan," she said, shaking his hand not gently. "Try not to break anything else tonight, okay? Deal. But I make no promises." They were forced to pair up when the instructor called for rotations. Darian glanced around at the other couples easily gliding across the floor and swallowed hard. "You're not going to sue me if I mess this up again, are you? Don't tempt me." He tried. "Really?" But 2 beats into the routine, he stepped on her foot again. "For the love of," Harper winced, hopping back. "Do you have something against my toes?" "Only a mild vendetta," Darian said, trying to laugh it off, though his ears turned red. "I swear, I'm usually better at picking things up. I run a company. With actual employees. Some of them even like me." Harper crossed her arms and leaned against the mirrored wall. "Let me guess. Tech startup. Close. Real estate. I own a few development firms." "Of course you do. What's that supposed to mean?" She shrugged. "You've got that I wear expensive watches and avoid carbs vibe." He looked down at his wrist. "This is a $20,000 watch, thank you." She raised her eyebrows. "And you just admitted that out loud." Darian grinned despite himself. She was sharp, quick, and unlike anyone he'd run into at his usual events where most people tried to impress him, not mock him. "I'm not trying to impress you," Harper added, like she read his mind. "I just want to finish this class without needing crutches." "Fair." They danced again, slower this time. Harper guided him through the steps, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. She smelled like coconut and sunlight, and the warmth of her skin made him forget the beat entirely. "Focus," she said, tapping his chest lightly. "You're here to dance, not stare." "Too late." She looked up at him, eyes narrowing, but her lips twitched like she was fighting back a smile. When the class ended, Darian walked out with her into the warm California night. The lot outside the studio was mostly empty except for a few old sedans and Harper's beat-up blue hatchback. "Thanks for not filing a police report," he said as she unlocked her door. "I'll let it slide. If you promise to not wear dress shoes next time." He hesitated. "You're assuming there'll be a next time. You already paid for the month, didn't you?" Darian chuckled. "Yeah, unfortunately." "Then I'll see you next week, Darian Holt." He watched her drive off, her taillights fading into the street. For a second, he stood there longer than he meant to, hands in his pockets, heart doing something stupid in his chest. He hadn't meant to go to that salsa class. He definitely hadn't meant to step on someone's foot twice. And he absolutely hadn't meant to meet a woman who could slice through his ego with one look and still make him want to come back for more. But Harper Nolan had just become the only reason he wanted to dance again. "You showed up," Harper said, one eyebrow arched as she leaned against the open studio door the following Thursday night. Darian adjusted the sleeves of his black knit pullover and offered a shrug. "I figured I owed you at least one evening without a personal injury." "I'm flattered," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Try to keep all feet intact tonight." The studio was already buzzing with music and laughter. Darian scanned the room. The same instructor clapped along to the beat, and couples were warming up with basic steps. He noticed Harper wasn't in dance shoes, just worn canvas sneakers with frayed laces, and her leggings were dusted in paint specks. "Long day?" he asked, nodding toward her clothes. "I had a mural deadline. Thought I'd make it here without looking like a walking color palette. But..." She held up her hands, palms stained in teal and gold. "Didn't quite make it." "You're a muralist?" Darian asked, surprised. "Public art. Mostly schools, community centers, some commissions. Pays enough to keep gas in the car and coffee in my veins." "That's incredible," he said, genuinely impressed. "I've seen some of the downtown pieces. Any of those yours?" "The one near the library with the cranes." "That's yours." He looked at her closer. "That's one of my favorites." Harper blinked, the compliment catching her off guard. "Thanks. Most people just assume it's some city grant project and move on. I make a living off buildings." "You make them come alive," Darian said, already stepping forward as the instructor called everyone to form pairs. "We might be more alike than you think." "I highly doubt that," Harper replied, but she took his hand anyway. The music started, something with more rhythm than melody this time, and Darian found himself keeping pace better than the week before. Harper didn't guide him as much. Instead, she watched him, nodding faintly when he got a step right. "Not bad," she said as they turned. "You've been practicing." "Only in my kitchen. My dog thinks I've lost my mind." "How big is your kitchen?" "Big enough to host a fundraiser in." Harper raised her eyebrows but didn't comment. Instead, she pivoted into a cross-body lead and he followed with more confidence than last time. "All right, Mr. Fundraiser Kitchen," she said as they spun into position. "Tell me something real." He hesitated, then said, "I hate elevators." "Like fear of heights?" "No. I hate the silence. The pretending. Everyone staring at the numbers change like it's life or death. I always take the stairs if I can." "Huh." Harper considered that. "That's oddly humanizing. I was hoping for a charming, but I'll take what I can get." She smiled but didn't respond. As the song ended, she stepped back and reached for her water bottle. "I'm teaching an art workshop this weekend. Kids from a local shelter." "Sounds meaningful." "It is. But the funding's been cut. We're short on supplies and volunteers." Darian leaned against the wall beside her. "What do you need?" "Brushes, canvas, paint, snacks. Mostly time. But I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to vent for a second." "I'll be there," he said. Harper turned. "What?" "Saturday. Wherever it is. I'll bring whatever's missing." She blinked. "You're volunteering? Is that so hard to believe? From a guy who wears cologne to a dance class?" "Yeah, kind of. Harsh. Just honest." Darian looked at her closely. "You don't let people in easily, do you?" Harper locked eyes with him. "I let the right ones in." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess I'll have to earn it." The instructor clapped again for the next round and they moved back to the floor. This time they danced without speaking. Darian's hand found hers and something in the space between them shifted. Not romantic yet, not exactly, but charged, like something waiting. After the class ended, they walked toward the lot again. Harper fished her keys from her bag, glancing up at the sky. "Forecast says rain this weekend," she said absently. "Then I'll bring umbrellas with the art supplies." She exhaled a laugh, short and unexpected. "You're serious?" "I wouldn't offer if I wasn't." Harper paused beside her car, the streetlights casting a soft glow on her face. All right, Holt. Saturday at 10. Don't be late. He nodded, stepping back as she climbed in. I won't. She started the engine, the muffler sputtering like it always did, and drove off into the night. Darian stood there for a moment, watching her go, knowing something had just shifted. Not in the dance, but in him. The community center smelled faintly of acrylic paint and lemon disinfectant, and the tables in the multipurpose room were already covered in brown craft paper when Darian arrived. He pushed open the side door with his shoulder, arms full of supply bags. Paint tubes clinked together, brushes poked out of canvas totes, and a few boxes of granola bars threatened to topple over as he set everything down. Harper glanced up from where she was pouring water into plastic cups. You're early. I brought everything on your list, he said, wiping his palms on his jeans. And then some. She looked through the bags, lifting a jar of metallic gold paint. You brought Winsor and Newton. That's overkill. I googled best acrylic paint for murals. The internet was very enthusiastic. Harper shook her head, amused despite herself. You could have gone to a dollar store and I wouldn't have blinked. Clearly you don't know how I do things. I'm starting to get the idea. Children began to trickle in, followed by a few volunteers. Darian found himself helping a boy named Andre set up his station, adjusting the easel and passing him a box of chalk pastels. The kid looked up at him, wide-eyed. Are you her boyfriend? Darian nearly choked on his coffee. Whose boyfriend? The art lady. Harper. No. I'm just here to help. Andre narrowed his eyes like he didn't quite believe him, then went back to drawing a dragon-breathing neon fire over a city skyline. Harper moved between tables, crouching beside the kids, offering quiet encouragement. Darian watched as she gently guided a girl's hand, showing her how to blend paint for a sunset. There was something about the way she knelt on the floor, jeans streaked with red and violet, completely unbothered by the mess or noise or chaos. She was rooted here in a way Darian had never seen anyone be rooted to anything. Later, while the kids took a snack break, Harper joined him near the back wall. She leaned against the folding table, eyes scanning the room. You good? He asked. She nodded. This is the part one love. When their guards drop and they just create. You're incredible with them. I'm not trying to be. I just listen. A lot of them don't get that anywhere else. Darian watched her for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about something. That sounds dangerous. I want to sponsor this workshop. Keep it going longer than one weekend. She turned to him, brows knitting. Why? Because you matter. They matter. And I'd rather fund something real than invest in another rooftop bar. Harper stared at him, expression unreadable. You don't even know me. Not entirely. But I know enough. She crossed her arms. You're used to people saying yes to you, aren't you? Almost exclusively. Well, I'm not built that way. I'm aware. They stood in silence as the kids returned to their tables. A boy spilled water and Harper moved without hesitation, grabbing a towel and laughing softly as she helped him clean it up. Darian didn't move. He just watched her, realizing something had shifted again, not just in how he felt but in what he wanted. When the workshop ended and the last of the children had been picked up, Harper and Darian stayed behind to clean. She tossed a bag of used brushes into the sink and wiped blue paint off her wrist. You didn't have to stay this long, she said. I wanted to. She dried her hands and turned to him, her voice quieter. You're not at all what I expected. What did you expect? He asked. Someone who showed up once, made a flashy gesture, and left. I can do flashy, he said. But I don't leave. Not when something's worth staying for. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she reached for her keys. Walk me out. Outside, the street was quiet. Her car was parked beneath a flickering street lamp, the same dented bumper and peeling sticker from the first night he saw her drive away. She leaned against the hood. You ever wonder why people end up in each other's lives? She asked suddenly. Sometimes. I didn't think you'd come back to class. I didn't think I'd meet someone who made me want to. Harper looked down at her hands. I'm not used to this. The attention. The offers. The consistency. I'm not doing it to impress you. Then why? Because you challenge me. You don't care about what I have, you care about who I am. And I haven't had that in a long time. She glanced up at him, the streetlight catching the edge of her profile. You're not easy to read, you know? I'm trying. I can tell. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Let me take you out. Harper narrowed her eyes. Like a date. No more dance floors. Just you and me. Somewhere with real food, no mirrors, and zero risk of foot injuries. She took a breath, then slowly nodded. All right. One date. I'll pick you up tomorrow. Text me the time. I don't have your number. She took his phone from his hand without asking and typed it in, then handed it back. Now you do. Darian looked at the screen, then at her. What changed your mind? You showed up, she said, stepping around him and opening her car door. Twice. She drove off, leaving a trail of exhaust and something else behind, something that felt dangerously close to hope. The restaurant Harper stepped into was not what she expected. It wasn't loud or flashy. No valet stand, no gold-plated menus or rooftop skyline views. Instead, she found herself in a quiet brasserie tucked into the side of a historic brick building. The lighting was soft, the air smelled like roasted garlic and thyme, and a jazz trio played low near the back, their instruments worn but loved. The hostess led her past linen-covered tables and into a private alcove where Darian stood, adjusting the cuff of his dark blazer. You're early, he said, pulling out her chair. So are you, she replied, settling in. I guess we're both eager. She picked up the menu and glanced at him over the top. I expected something more dramatic. I've done dramatic, he said. Didn't feel right for you. She lowered the menu. And what does? This. He gestured to the space between them. A place where we can talk without shouting over a saxophone solo or dodging someone's elbow. But there is a saxophone solo, she said, tilting her head toward the trio. Okay, but it's tasteful. She smiled, then scanned the menu. I can't pronounce half of this. Want me to order for us? Only if it doesn't involve snail foam or anything described as deconstructed. He laughed. Understood. Over the next hour, they shared a meal of roasted sea bass, truffle risotto, and a bottle of wine Darian had already selected. Harper asked questions about his work, not the generic ones, but specific things. Why he chose renovation over new builds. How he decided which projects to walk away from. He answered all of them without hesitation, but she could tell which topics made him lean forward and which made him pause. You don't talk much about people, she noted, swirling her wine. You talk about deals, cities, timelines, but not people. Darian looked down at his plate for a moment. I've lost a few. Not to anything dramatic. Just time. Distance. I got good at staying detached. Is that what you're doing now? No, he said quietly. Not with you. She held his gaze, then set her glass down. Good. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. You make me think about things I've buried. Parts of me I didn't think anyone would want to see. I don't want perfect. I'm not offering it. They finished dinner without rushing. When they stepped outside, the night was cool and the sidewalk empty. Darian didn't lead her to a waiting car. Instead, he walked beside her, hands in his pockets, as they strolled down the quiet street. I used to come here with my mom, he said suddenly. She loved the pianist. Said he made the place feel like Paris. Harper glanced at him, surprised. Is she still around? No. She passed 4 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. She would have liked you, he said. She had a thing for people who didn't take my crap. Smart woman. They reached a small park, dark but safe, with a fountain in the middle and benches surrounding it. He stopped beside one. Can we sit? They did. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. You ever think about what you'd be doing if things had gone differently? Harper asked. Sometimes. I think I would have been a chef, or maybe a pilot. Something with control but freedom built in. Interesting combination. What about you? I'd open a studio, teach kids full-time, paint what I wanted instead of what pays. You still can. Maybe. But dreams feel different when you have to fight to keep the lights on. He studied her, then said, I want to help. You already did. No, he said, turning to face her fully. I mean really help. I bought the old firehouse on 8th Street. Was going to turn it into a boutique office space. But it's got light, structure, space. It would make a damn good studio. She stared at him. You'd run it. However you want. I'll fund it. No strings. Harper blinked. You're serious? Yes. Why? Because I believe in you. And because I want to build something with you that isn't just dance steps or dinners. Her throat tightened. This is a lot. I know. But I'm not offering it to impress you. I'm offering it because I believe in building things that last. And I want you in my life. What if it falls apart? Then we rebuild. Together. The wind picked up, brushing strands of hair across her face. Darian reached out, tucking them gently behind her ear. She didn't pull away. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, he said. But I've never wanted anything more. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I want to say yes. Then say it. I need to see it first, she said, eyes shining. The firehouse. He smiled then. Not triumphant, hopeful. Tomorrow. I'll pick you up. Okay. The next morning, they stood outside the old red brick building, its broad windows covered in dust but intact. Darian unlocked the door and pushed it open, stepping aside so she could walk in first. Sunlight poured through the high windows. The interior was raw concrete floors, exposed beams, walls waiting for color. Harper turned in a slow circle, her hand brushing the edge of a rusted staircase. She looked back at him. You bought this for me? I bought it for us. For what we could create together. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't blink them away. She let them fall, stepping toward him. I don't need a grand gesture. I know. But this? This is everything I didn't know how to ask for. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. She pressed her face to his chest, breathing in the warmth of him. I'm in, she said. All the way. They kissed there, in the middle of the dust and light and possibility. And when they pulled apart, they weren't two separate lives trying to intersect, they were a beginning. Steady, real, built to last. The firehouse had been transformed. 6 weeks after Harper first stepped into it with paint on her hands and disbelief in her eyes, the entire space buzzed with life. Skylights had been installed, flooding the studio with warm, natural light. The faded brick walls had been carefully restored, and one of them now held a 12-foot mural of phoenixes rising through wildflowers, Harper's newest and most personal piece. The floor had been polished, long worktables lined one wall, and a small lounge area in the corner held books, art magazines, and a record player spinning old soul tracks. Children's canvases dried on wire racks. A chalkboard by the entrance listed upcoming community workshops in Harper's neat, loopy handwriting. It wasn't just a studio. It was home. Harper stood barefoot near the windows, sunlight catching the gold flecks of dried paint on her forearm. She was wearing an old t-shirt with the sleeves cut off and a bandana in her hair. But when Darian stepped inside, he still felt like the air shifted around her. He dropped his keys on the counter, watching her with that quiet intensity she'd gotten used to. You're staring again, she said without turning. I can't help it. She looked over her shoulder, a smile tugging at her lips. The kids finished the mural in the back room. You have to go see it. I will, he said, walking over and wrapping his arms around her from behind. But only after I get a kiss. She leaned back against him, tilting her head so he could press his lips to the curve of her neck. You're getting greedy. Only with you. She turned in his arms, brushing a fleck of plaster off his collar. How was the meeting? Board approved the new housing project. We break ground next month. The one with the community garden? And subsidized rent for artists. I may have borrowed a few ideas. She rested her palms on his chest. You're changing things. I'm following your lead. They spent the afternoon together, prepping the space for the evening's open house. Volunteers arrived and set up folding chairs. A jazz trio different from the one at the restaurant, younger, louder, set up in the corner. Harper's students filtered in with their families, and soon the studio was full of laughter, paint-streaked cheeks, and the scent of citrus candles burning by the door. Harper moved through the crowd like she was made for it. She guided parents to their kids' artwork, answered questions from local reporters, and still found time to steal glances at Darian, who was deep in conversation with a city councilwoman about expanding art grants. As the sun dipped below the skyline and the music swelled, Harper stepped onto a small platform near the mural wall and tapped the mic. "Hi," she said, voice soft but steady. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped make this space possible. Especially to the man who believed in it and in me before I even believed in myself." She looked at Darian, and the room followed her gaze. "He didn't just fund a studio," she continued. "He gave this community a place to breathe, a place to be seen. And he gave me the chance to do what I love, with the person I love." A murmur ran through the crowd. Darian stood up, walked to the front, and took the mic from her hand. "I didn't plan to speak," he said, "but I did plan to do this." He turned to Harper and dropped to one knee. Gasps echoed through the studio. A small girl near the front clapped her hands over her mouth. Harper froze. Darian pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple, stunning ring, white gold, with a single round diamond that caught every light in the room. "I didn't come to that salsa class looking for anything. But the second you looked at me like I was just some guy who couldn't dance, I knew I'd never be the same. You've changed everything, Harper. You made me better, softer, stronger. I don't want a life without you in it." He swallowed once, then said, "Marry me." Her eyes filled, and she didn't wait. She dropped to her knees in front of him, threw her arms around his neck, and whispered, "Yes." The crowd exploded. Applause, cheers, laughter. The jazz trio launched into something bright and celebratory. Darian kissed her as the ring slid onto her finger, and when they stood, they did it together. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the music had faded, Harper sat on the studio's back staircase, her bare feet resting on the cool concrete. Darian joined her, handing over a glass of blackberry lemonade. "You know," she said, gazing at the mural, "I used to think I'd never belong anywhere. That I'd always be scraping by, chasing scraps of inspiration." "You were never meant to scrape," he said. "You were meant to soar." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're not what I thought rich men were like." "Good. And I never thought I'd say yes to a man in front of 100 people. I'm full of surprises." She tilted her head, studying him. "What do you think happens next?" "We build a life. Together. We keep this place running. We travel. We argue about paint colors in our kitchen. We dance even badly. And we never stop choosing each other." She nodded, quiet for a beat. "I want a small wedding. Whatever you want. Barefoot, maybe. In the studio. Then I'm dancing down the aisle in socks." She laughed, and the sound echoed into the quiet night. They fell into silence again, but it was the kind that felt like a promise. The kind that didn't need to fill space, because the space itself had become sacred. 3 months later, they stood in front of the mural wall, surrounded by friends, family, kids with paint on their cheeks, volunteers who had become extended family. Harper wore a cream dress that dusted the floor. Darian wore navy, no tie, and his heart in his eyes. They said their vows with hands entwined and laughter threading through their words. They kissed as confetti rained down, recycled, of course, made from old art class scraps. And when the sun dipped low, when the candles flickered in jars, and the final song played, Harper danced with him down the center of the studio. No mirrors. No missteps. Just them. Together. Always.